Hey guys, how's it going? I wanted to do another book review for you today, and today we're going to be reviewing The Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer by none other than Joel Salatin. Joel Salatin is one of my favorite authors. He's hilarious. I had the pleasure of meeting him as well. This is not his most recent book, but previous to his book that just came out, which is called Folks, This Ain't Normal, this was his most recent book. And there's a letter in here from Wendell Berry to Joel, and if you don't know who Wendell Berry is, he's basically like a philosopher and a really, really smart guy about agriculture and you know, what it means to be a farmer and where we fit into today's society. So he's really a respected voice in the agricultural community, and the fact that he wrote Joel a note and they published it in this book is pretty cool. And basically Wendell summarizes the book pretty well, and he says that if it's not beautiful or if it smells, then you're not doing something right. Basically, that's what he says. So, and basically that is kind of the overwhelming premise of this book, you know, is if it smells or if it looks bad, then, you know, you're probably not doing something correctly. And one of the best things I can relate to this is manure management, you know. If your farm smells like crap, then, you know, you're doing something wrong. So challenge yourself to go out and change that. So there's different sections. The first section is nature and earth, and it's basically about caring for the earth and realizing the fact that all the things that we get on the farm do in fact come from nature. So if we can work with nature and respect nature in a better manner, then we're going to have more success on our farms. So he talks about water and why crooked fences are good, because land is not perfectly straight and symmetrical. Talks about keeping your farm toxin free, which is really cool. And I want to point out, this is not just for farmers. This is kind of his philosophy about what farming should be and kind of what Polyface Farm embodies, right? So even if you're not a farmer, you're just interested in farming, like, you know, you work in downtown Tennessee, or Tennessee as a state. You work in downtown Memphis, right? But you want to start buying food from a local farmer. Well, this book would be a good place to start for you and kind of read about what the essence of this type of farming is. You know, what a local sustainable food system really looks like. So the next category is produce food and fiber, and he basically talks about, you know, what a farm is for. The next section I think is really cool, and that's called Respect for Life, and he talks about the pigness of the pig, and basically how when you confine a pig into a barn with, you know, steel floors where their excrement can fall through, the pig is not being a pig because the pig is not in its natural environment. So he advocates for putting a pig into that pig's natural environment, basically, right? Portable infrastructure is really cool. If you don't know about how big of a proponent Joel is of portable infrastructure, this chapter would be really enlightening to you. Portable infrastructure basically gives you limitless flexibility to your farming operation. So that's pretty cool. Sensually romantic kind of ties into the first thing I said about this book. You know, if you're doing something wrong, it'll probably smell or it doesn't look good. So that Sensually romantic, that's on page 164. That's what that chapter is about. Another really cool chapter is he advocates for less machinery and advocates for animals doing more of the farm work. So that's an enlightening chapter. I wish he would have gone into, you know, a little bit more detail and like some more solutions, I guess, you know, but nonetheless, it's an enlightening chapter. Nativized genetics. If you're not a farm or ranch person, basically a really big overreaching theme in farming and ranching is the genetics of certain livestock. And we breed livestock for genetic adaptability to things like heat or to less water or to, you know, be able to walk further and longer distances for water, to have better marbling in their meat. So there's a lot of different there's tons of different genetic type traits that farmers and ranchers, seek. So he advocates in the nativized genetics chapter of, okay, assess where you're at. And for example, I'm in Colorado, so the summers are pretty hot and the winters are cold. So maybe I'll probably look for a well balanced cow breed if I want to start raising grass-fed beef in Colorado, because we can get temperatures into as high as 105 degrees, maybe even 110 degrees on the rare occasion. But also just this last week here, it was negative 15 degrees. Okay, and then it was like negative 40 with the wind chill. So it can get very, very cold and very hot here. So he basically says, okay, throw all the other things that you know about breeds out the window and start selecting the genetics in your livestock for where you are. So start paying attention to what animals are doing the best in the summer and in the winter, and then maybe you'll want to start breeding those animals, and you're going to want to cull some other animals out, which means you want to remove those other animals from your herd so their genetics aren't carried on. Then he talks about honest pricing, which I think is a really good chapter for everyone. And pricing your products fair and honestly, which, I mean, you don't want to be ripping people off, and people need to feel like they're getting a value from you, right? And I think, if I remember correctly, he goes into a little bit about how it's hard to have an honest pricing system with the, ridiculous government regulations for some of the food that goes into that. And then another really cool, the last section is promote community, which is just a great thing to hear from a farmer, right? When was the last time you heard a farmer talk about promoting community? Unless it was Joel Salatin or, some other farmers out there, your average farmer is not going to talk about promoting community. Hell, they probably don't even, their community is 10 or 15 people, right? He talks about the white-collar farmer in this chapter, and the white-collar farmer basically earns a very nice living, let's say $150,000 a year, up to millions of dollars a year, due to his or her farming efforts. And he advocates why that is a noble pursuit and a noble goal, because, as farmers, we are producing food, which is necessary for life, right? So that's a really cool chapter. He talks about relationship farming, which is good, which also ties into the next chapter, which is direct marketing. And direct marketing, if you're not familiar with what that is I'm Farmer Chris, and your name's Joe, and we meet face to face and we interact with each other, and I'm responsible for raising and producing the grass-fed beef and the pastured poultry that is in your hand right now. And we build a one-on-one relationship, and you can ask me questions, and we can interact, and we can talk, and you're actually buying from me. Go try and buy a box of cereal directly from a farmer. You can't, right? So that's the power of the direct marketing message. And then he advocates for a localized economy. If you heard my other review on another book I did by Joel Salatin, once again he advocates for the candlestick maker, it's the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, right? So we need to start, if we're going to be serious about sustainability and surviving this oil crisis, we're going to need to start being serious about our local economies and purchasing things, almost everything, locally. So that's my review of The Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer. It's a great book, other than each chapter ends with that's the sheer ecstasy of being a lunatic farmer, which is kind of corny. But overall, this is another great book from Joel Salatin. And if you're familiar with his other works, this is easier to read because it's much more concise and boiled down. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Take care.